New at NAMT, the next wave of musical theater writers, is a bite-sized series dedicated to spotlighting the emerging voices in musical theater. Every interview provides a unique glimpse into the creative minds behind the next big musicals. So whether you're a producer, theater lover, or even simply curious about the future of musical theater, New at NAMT offers a front row seat to a new generation of creators. New at NAMT Season 3 Arts Leaders will highlight associate artistic directors and artistic producers from NAMT member organizations. It's time to lower the lights, raise the curtain, and LX1 go on New at NAMT. I am your host, Jean-Paul Yovanoff from Musical Theater Radio, and joining me as co-host for Season 3 is Skye Ivey, the new Works Associate at NAMT. Before we get to today's interview, let's welcome Skye to the show. Hello, Skye. How you doing today?
Hi, doing well. How about you?
Good. I can't complain.
Very good. Today, I'm excited to share another NAMT program with everyone. So, today I wanted to chat about a program that we've evolved that runs alongside the festival. So, formerly known as the Directing Observership, which staffed young directors onto each festival musical creative team, is now a full festival emerging artists program that includes a suite of creative assistantships and a line producer residency. This program has always served historically underrepresented groups and now includes a creative assistantship, which brings not only young directing assistants, but also music assistants and script assistants onto festival teams. And then on the other side, the line producer residency, those line producers work closely with the rest of the producing team during the festival and then are brought into the NAMT membership for a year following that. Alumni of this program have worked regionally, off-Broadway, on Broadway, and on the West End. On a personal note, I directly oversee this program, and it's one of the most rewarding parts of my job at NAMT. The participants of this program always inspire and excite me with their enthusiasm and values-based art. I'm also challenged to redefine what it means to be an effective leader as I grow alongside them. We're really looking forward to seeing how this program continues to grow, and applications for the Emerging Artists program will open again in June.
Nice. Well, with you in charge, I'm pretty sure they're in good hands.
Oh, thank you very much.
All right. Now that we know what's going on, we've met Skye. Let's get on with the interview. Today we are speaking with Dev Bondarin. Dev is a New York-based theater director and associate artistic director of Prospect Musicals. With Prospect, Dev directs and co-curates an annual musical theater lab, which commissions writers to create musicals on a central theme. She also serves on the festival committee for the National Alliance for Musical Theater. Dev, welcome to New at NAMT.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Hi, Deb. So excited to be chatting with you today.
Hi, Sky. Thank you.
Can you tell us about your journey? How did you get started and what brought you to this point in your career?
Amazing. Well, this is a kismet question on this day because last night I actually saw my high school drama teacher for the first time in a couple of years, and it was really great to reconnect with her. And I bring that up because it really was her style of work and her, inclusion-based directing of the shows that I was involved with in high school that really opened my eyes in terms of, what theater could be in terms of ensemble building, storytelling, really giving young people skills for life, whether or not they went on into the theater or not. So that's really like I pretty much feel like that's where my journey began. Also, the fact that I grew up in New York City and my mother, not knowing that I was going to go into theater, took me to a bunch of shows because she was an English teacher and, loved theater. And I just was immersed in seeing theater in New York City. And then when I got to college, I very quickly realized that acting was not for me after acting in a couple of pieces. And I really dabbled in many different parts of theater. I designed a couple of sets, I produced, I stage managed, and then I finally trusted myself enough to say, okay, I want to see what this directing thing is, and directed two full-length shows my senior year and just really fell in love with what that could be, and continued on my journey after undergrad. I did a directing and dramaturgy internship up at a theater company in Portland, Maine. Then I turned around and came back to New York City, where I went to the MFA program at Brooklyn College, which is part of the City University of New York. And it was during that time that I actually met Kara Reichel, who is the producing artistic director of Prospect Musicals. So my collaboration and connection with Prospect goes back quite a while. And I started working with the company soon after I graduated from grad school, as I was also trying to build, somewhat of a freelance career. And my role with Prospect has evolved, as has my freelance career. Now we're here.
Well, I love the fact that you open it up with your high school drama teacher. On a bit of a tangent, you know what? Just talking about these unsung heroes, that no one ever talks about, that, they do all this stuff in the background, and you get big, you get important or whatever. And yeah, I love the fact
Yeah,
you
well,
brought that
she
up.
is absolutely a hero of mine, and I don't think I would be doing this had I not had a connection with her. And I told her that last night. So there you go.
Very nice. What do you do in your role as associate artistic director at Prospect Musicals?
Part of it was in your introduction to me, which is totally fine. We have an annual program at Prospect called the Musical Theater Lab that, has been around now for quite a few years. And each year we have an open application process, which we feel very strongly about, where we get to meet through the application process, just, a wonderful array of musical theater writers who would like to be part of the lab. And we do a full selection process. And from that, we put together a cohort of approximately usually 8 writing teams. And each year, Kara, the producing artistic director, and I, who also is the co-curator of the lab, we come up with a central theme for the lab. So this past year, the lab's theme was time, and we called it Jump Cut. And we like to come up with a theme because it really promotes the idea that there's a connection among the pieces for the evening. But at the same time, we like to keep that very open because we really want to encourage the writers to go wherever they dream of going with their pieces. And it's always so amazing to, start the beginning of the lab process and have no idea what we're going to see a month later when they come back from this, basically a timed writing exercise with drafts of these new musicals. And so it's just a really exciting, and creative time. There's no pressure of, reviews or, who's going to come in and, want to back my musical or whatever. It's really, as Cara likes to say, writing for fun, but also with the experience of knowing that there's going to be a group of amazing performers who are going to come in and in under 10 hours of rehearsal are going to learn this material and perform it in a concert setting just a couple of weeks later. So it's always such an inspiring and really exciting time, and really one of my favorite things that I do with Prospect, but also favorite things that I do in the year. And I can probably say now that over the years that I have directed and co-curated this program, I have probably directed over 100 new short musicals.
That's incredible. It has been one of my favorite events to attend as well. It's very
Hey,
exciting
thank
and
you. Yeah, it's a really exciting thing. And it thrills me that it's really sort of grown in, the community is aware of it. And so I think there are just people who look forward to coming to it, to just, see who the new writers are who are out there who are taking part.
Can you tell us more about Prospect Musicals and the organization's history and new musical development?
Yeah, Prospect is just celebrating its 25th anniversary now and just rebranded as Prospect Musicals. It is the same company that has been known as Prospect Theater Company for the last 24 years. It was founded by a group of Princeton alumni, and a number of the founders are still, part of the day-to-day operations of the company. And it has, always from the beginning, including starting with the time that I've been with the company, just a really amazing place that promotes the development of new musicals, both, in a reading concert workshop setting, but also being able to support projects through the development process through to full production. So while my focus with the company may be on concert and workshop and development, there are a number of wonderful shows that have come through sort of the pipeline with Prospect into full production, and those have also just been thrilling projects that the company now has numerous that they can name because they're 25 years old.
And what kinds of artists or projects does your organization prioritize supporting?
That's a great question. I think, the company has evolved over the years, and, really, is striving to tell stories that are untold stories that you may not be seeing in other places. A couple of shows that have come through Prospect recently or are currently being developed by Prospect are a wonderful musical called The Hello Girls about women phone operators during World War One. A story that I had never known before seeing this amazing musical. And currently, the company is developing something called the Oscar Michaud Project, which is a musical based on the life of Black filmmaker Oscar Michaud. Again, a story that has not been told elsewhere in musical theater. And so, I think Prospect really is interested in being sort of, for lack of a better phrase, sort of on the cutting edge of bringing to the stage stories that have not been out there previously.
And Oscar Michaud, a festival
Yes,
alumni show, and a Frank Young Fund Award
yes,
grantee show. Very cool.
yes.
What do you feel makes your organization unique in the musical theater landscape?
I think, I mean, this might sound silly, but I think the fact that it's endured as long as it has, being both successful in, welcoming projects by established artists, but also, especially through the Musical Theater Lab, being able to really champion the new voices that are out there. Something I mentioned earlier when I was talking about the lab is that it's really important to us that it's an open application, and that, while, unfortunately we can't do four labs at the same time and accept more people, it gives us the opportunity to just be aware of the names that are out there, the names of people who are, up and coming, which doesn't mean that everybody in the lab is, super young. It's really important to us that, the idea of creating new work is not just about people who are, just out of school, although some of the people who do the program are just out of school, but that, everyone's sort of on their own artistic journey, and that we like to meet them where they are. And I think that Prospect does a really great balancing job of, working with established artists and new voices. And I think that's something that really sets the company apart.
Yeah, and can you talk to us more about how Prospect approaches supporting those new musicals and emerging writers?
Yeah, there are a couple of different ways that the company supports that kind of development. There's something called the Ignite series that the company has done sort of regularly for maybe the past 10 or so years, and actually just recently did a amazingly curated shout out to Cara Reichel festival called the Ignite Concert Festival, which was just this amazing lineup for 2 weeks of new musicals that are in development, both showcases of a certain writer's work or a show that's being developed. And this was an opportunity to do, a concert of the music. I directed a one-woman musical of a show that I had done the New York premiere of a number of years ago. So it was amazing to revisit that. And, as I was saying to the staff of the company just recently, it was so just life affirming in this moment to have this weeks long celebration of the art form with so many different artists involved at a time when, we really need companies to be able to figure out ways to bring people together and to share stories, without sounding cliche. We need that more than ever. And I think that, just at the right moment that it was right for the company to do this festival of concerts, I think it was also much needed. And so, that doesn't totally answer your question, but I think that, Prospect is, sort of meeting the moment in terms of supporting writers through workshops and concerts and the lab, but also, meeting the moment in terms of, what the greater theater community needs in New York right now.
You also worked as a director outside of Prospect. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, thank you. I do a lot of new work, a lot of readings and workshops, which I'm very grateful for. I got the opportunity last fall to direct a play. I started out as a play director and sort of didn't know that musicals were going to be something in my future, for a while. And I returned to directing plays, sort of in the pandemic and sort of I'm definitely doing both right now. And last fall, I had the great opportunity to direct a play at 59E59 with an off-Broadway company called White Horse Theater. And what was really exciting about that project was that, I do so much development, but it isn't always for shows that are, going to have a full production in the near future. And this was an opportunity where I directed 2 readings of a play and then got to stage a full production of it. And so that was a very exciting experience for me. So that was something that I did recently. As I mentioned, I just did a concert of a musical called Marguerite with Katie Huffman, as part of the Ignite series concerts with Prospect. And I just directed an evening of work by a lyricist named Seth Christianfeld, at 54 Below this past week. And the next thing I'm doing is a reading of a new play with a writer named Marcus Scott, who I collaborate with quite a lot.
Dev, I'd love to talk more about your involvement with NAMT. So you're on the festival committee and you also directed a festival presentation in the 35th Annual Festival of New Musicals. That was Fallout. How has being a part of an organization like NAMT impacted your work?
Oh, it's been wonderful, just the, opportunity to meet and connect with so many other professionals in the field from not only in New York, but across the country. I really take being part of the festival, so it's such a meaningful experience. It's really a wonderful experience to be able to know that, we're sort of, that the committee is sort of helping to shape what is brought forward to the greater musical theater audience for potential production workshop reading. And that, through a very rigorous process, which I commend NAMT for, we're able to come together to really terse out what we think should be making it to that next level and being shared with the community. And it's just, I find it fun, I find it exciting, I find it meaningful, and it's just been wonderful to connect with the other committee members and then be able to celebrate at the festival.
Do you want to talk about Fallout at all before we move on?
Oh yeah, Fallout was a show. It was my first year on the committee, and I just fell in love with the show from the moment I read it in the second round. And I mentioned that to Frankie Daly, the director of new works at NAMT, and so he knew that I was interested in the show. And then it made it to the final round, and I was super excited that the committee felt like it should move on. And I had no previous experience with the show. I didn't know the writers. I didn't know who wrote it until as we are not supposed to know until the show was selected. And it just sort of, I mean, through discussions with Frankie, I found out that they did not have a director lined up for the festival. And so, I really handed to him for bringing me forward with the writers and, sort of talking me up. And they said, sure, we'll go with her. And that was, a really, it was a leap of faith on their part. And it really was a wonderful experience being part of the festival as a director, and working on that show. It's a really special show.
What do you think is important about membership organizations today?
I mean, I think it's everything, at a moment when, it's really easy to feel like everything is falling apart. It's really important to know that there are potentially other people who feel the same way, and that there's a place that we can meet and be together and sort of say no to that, because we have to find positivity and hope, and collaboration is part of that. And I think, just being able to be in a space with other people who are like-minded, wanting to tell stories in the musical form is already more life-affirming than not. And I think that, organizations like NAMT are key in terms of, giving that space, especially right now.
Can you speak more about the role of collaboration in the future of new musical development?
Yeah, I mean, I think collaboration is everything as well. When I started directing musicals, it was sort of this extremely eye-opening experience of like, oh, this is, there are just so many more people involved, but that was such an exciting thing to me that, there's this whole possibility in terms of how the collaboration extends to musical storytelling, and that the story can be told in new and exciting ways, and that, some people may view that as like too many cooks in the kitchen, but I don't. I view it as, more like-minded people getting on board with the same idea and being able to exchange ideas and challenge each other and really, move forward into the next stage of whatever the show wants to be.
Is there a particular project or collaboration that has been especially meaningful to you?
Yeah, I mean, whenever I do the musical theater lab, what you just asked me made me think of this, that like whenever I do the lab, there, between 8 and 9 shows. And I always say that when I'm working on each show, that show is my favorite. And I think that that's a really important sort of idea globally, which is that, of course I've had my fair share of experiences that I wouldn't want to revisit, but I really have been, sort of blessed with the experience of really being excited about what I'm working on at any given moment. But your question is more specific. And I guess at this moment, I would answer that the show that I just directed a concert of at the Ignite Festival with Prospect was a show that I was revisiting called Marguerite, featuring the amazing actress Katie Huffman. It is a one-person show, bio musical about Saint Marguerite Bourgeois, who was a 16th century nun in France and then in Canada. She helped found the city of Montreal. And just what an inspiring figure. I had people who saw the concert and text me to say that they went home and just like spent the rest of the evening reading about her. But it was really meaningful to revisit the show 5 years after the premiere of the show. That was pre-pandemic. I was definitely like at a different space in my own work. And so to be able to go back to this show that's really about not only perseverance and, struggling through adversity, but also about a woman who was a champion for equality and justice, at this moment was just really meaningful and wonderful. And I thank Prospect for giving me and the show the time and the space to return to it.
What do you think are some of the biggest challenges and opportunities facing new musical theater right now?
I mean, challenges are always financial, having the time and space and, support to be able to do the development. I think I come from a background of, feeling like it is possible to do a lot with very little, and I still feel that way. But I think, it's always super important to value everyone's work, and make sure that people are being compensated fairly or as fairly as possible. And so that above all else, valuing people, which I know a lot of people, which I know people do, but being able to have, the budget to be able to do that so that the show gets the right people or the people that the team wants to be able to develop it, I think is, getting harder and harder. So, money, if you have a rich friend, ask them to donate to a musical theater development program for sure. I think it's good that many companies are sort of, teaming up to do co-productions. It results in fewer productions, which makes me sad, but I think the problem solving of that to make sure that work is still being developed and people are being, hired fairly, I think is super important.
What's something that excites you about where new musicals are headed?
I mean, I think I've said part of this already, but just the stories that are being told. I mean, without revealing anything because we can't, so many of the musicals that we're currently looking at for the festival this year, are stories that have not been told before, or stories that are, maybe familiar but being told in a new way. And I think that that's really encouraging to me, that, the innovation in this field continues, that, people are finding their way into exciting places, places that, make me want to keep reading or keep listening. And, just going back to, the Hello Girls and Oscar Me show with Prospect, just stories that are shining a light on figures or historical events that, we might not have known about if somebody didn't write a musical about it. And like, please do that. Please continue to do that.
And what's your favorite part of working in new musicals?
I mean, for me, it is the collaboration, and being able to, connect with the composer, the libretto writer. If that's the same person as the lyricist, then that's great. If it's three different people, then it's even more people to have that first conversation with. I love the collaboration with a music director about, how are we going to put together this schedule? I am absolutely a director that loves creating the schedule for a musical. I feel like I might be one of the only ones, but it fills me with such joy when I'm working on a musical and at the beginning we're sort of looking at the schedule, because yeah, it's the schedule and it feels kind of like a headache, but for me it's also very exciting, because what we're doing is we're creating a map for how we're going to get from that table read to the music rehearsals, to the staging, to the stage. And it's just it's exciting. And so creating the schedule is like actually one of my most favorite experiences, because it puts into my mind what's in store, with the collaboration, with the permaperformers, with the other team members.
I also love making schedules, so
Oh my
I
God,
love that you
Skye, why have
just
we never
said that.
talked about this? My God.
Making schedules is so fun.
Yeah,
Deb,
now imagine my making the musical theater lab schedule. It is an insane time, but it works. We make it work.
well, and I like what you said, you're building the map of how you're going
Yep,
to achieve the thing
absolutely.
and how you're going
Absolutely.
to. So I agree. Awesome. Well, Deb, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank
This has
you
been
both.
so wonderful. Before we let you go, I have a couple of rapid fire questions for you. So, ready? Was there a particular moment or show that made you realize you wanted to work in theater?
Show that made me want to work in theater. Ooh. Yeah, I mean, when I was a senior in high school, I was in a production of a very rarely produced Kurt Weill musical called Street Scene. That is an adaptation of an Elmer Rice play, also called Street Scene, about neighbors who live on the Lower East Side in Manhattan, and they're mostly immigrants, and it is just, I mean, they're all immigrants, and it just is a piece that, I would love to work on, but at the time when I was, 17 years old, it was just so inspiring that we were able to like sort of climb the mountain of doing such a challenging, difficult piece of theater that really moved so many people. And I think it stayed with me from that moment on. And I feel like, I brought that with me into my college experience and just sort of never let it go.
Just as a side note, back in the day when I was doing auditioning, I used, I think, Lonely Town. Is that the
Yep.
song for
Lonely
Lonely
House.
Lonely House? I used to
Lonely
use that
House.
as an audition piece.
It's
Yeah.
sung by the character Sam. Yep.
Yeah, I love that song.
It's a beautiful song.
Yeah.
The awesome thing about Street Scene is that the music is by Kurt Weill. The text is by Langston Hughes. What a pairing.
First musical you ever fell in love with?
The Pajama Game.
Favorite opening number of all time?
Tradition. Fiddler on the Roof.
All good answers. Can't go wrong with any of those. Dev, thanks again for joining us today and introducing yourself and your work to the listeners. Where can folks learn more about you and your work?
I'm on social media at Dev Bondarin on Instagram. I also have a website that is in great need of an update, but that is devbondarin.com. There is an extensive bio there, and hopefully sooner rather than later will be more information.
Fantastic. All right. Of course, I also want to thank this week's co-host, Skye, Ivey, for joining us today. Once again, I am your host, Jean-Paul Yovanoff, and on behalf of NAMT and MTR, thank you for joining us today, and we'll see you in the theater.